welcome back to my channel, Beautiful Minutia. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany, and today I'm out and about getting groceries, but I decided I really wanted to stop into one of my favorite thrift stores because I haven't been in there in a while, and you can fill a bag with books for only $1. And sometimes I find tons of stuff, sometimes I find literally not one thing. So I'm gonna go in and take a peek, see if I can find anything good. I'll take you along with me and share if I do find anything. And I'm back, and I got a ton of books. I got 2 bags worth, and bags are like $1 for however many books you can fit in there. So one of the bags are like super full, the other one less full, but it still feels like quite a steal for only $2. My daughter has already taken some of the books and they're off things that I bought for her. So most of those are not going to be included in this. They were just kind of like little things that I thought maybe she would like. So they're not quite as exciting as some of these other things. I just figured if I'm already paying $1 for a bag, I might as well fill it as full as I can. Okay, so I have these split up into genres, and believe it or not, I'm pretty sure that nonfiction is my largest genre, but I will have the genres linked down below so you can jump around if you want to. All right, so a couple of these are gifts for people. So I found this paperback collection of All Things Bright and Beautiful, which is the second in James Herriot's All Creatures Great and Small series. My mom started this series and really enjoyed it, and her library is super limited, even more limited than mine. And if she wants to borrow a book from another library that's not hers, even if it's like the next town over, she has to pay $1, which is ridiculous because you could find it for that or less at a thrift store. In this case, less. So I picked this one up for her. And then as a joke, I saw the spine of this that says, "Don't pee on my leg and tell me that it's raining." And it's a book by Judge Judy. And I didn't know that when I pulled it out. I was just like, what? And I pulled it out. But my dad actually likes Judge Judy, and he used to love to watch her. I don't think he really watches her very frequently anymore. But I kind of bought this as a joke. I don't know if he'll actually read it or not, but early Father's Day present. I also found I Am Malala, which I have not read at all, but I've heard really wonderful things about her. Her story is like really inspirational, and so it's one that I would like to get to, and I'm sure that I'm going to be very happy that I own. I also found this super old book that I remember as a child watching the movie of this and then reading my sister's copy, which she still has, or talking about reading it later this year. But this book is China Cry by Nora Lamb, and this is about a girl who grew up in China and she becomes a Christian and then is like persecuted, imprisoned, like terrible things happen to her because of her faith. But it is a true story, and I remember enjoying it when I was younger, but I don't remember more about it other than that aspect. So it's one that I was really surprised to find, really took me off guard, and I had to get it. I also got Desperate Prayers for Desperate Times by John Eckhart, and I have read one of his books before about prophecy, I think, that had like lots of scripture in it and stuff, and I read it years ago, but I remember enjoying it. So this one sounded like it would be a good one, and it too looks like it has a lot of scripture interwoven in it and like prayers that are based on scriptures, which I really like. I also found a copy of The Knowledge of the Holy by A.W. Tozer, which yes, I already own, and yes, I'm reading right now. But really special and influential nonfiction Christian books, if I see a copy of them, I like to get an extra one because then I have it on hand to give to someone. On the Christian nonfiction train, I have The Life and Diary of David Brainerd. And David Brainerd was a missionary who did a lot, but died really young. I think he was like 29 or something like that when he died, and he did so much for the Lord, and he's just very inspiring. And so I am really excited to have a copy of this. My husband actually has this on his Kindle, but he doesn't have a physical copy. So I was excited to find some of these kind of like more obscure books. I also found a couple of historical nonfictions, one being this Jean Fritz book, which I really like Jean Fritz's writing for middle graders for historical nonfiction, and this is You Want Women to Vote, Lizzie Stanton. And so I'm just gonna hang on to this, and this will probably be a book that I just like throw in as like an extra read whenever we get to this time period. And then I also found Into Africa, The Epic Adventures of Stanley and Livingstone. I don't know anything about them. I just know the like Dr. Livingstone, I presume, line, and that's pretty much it. But I'm getting to the point where I'm really starting to enjoy historical nonfictions. This is written by Martin Dugard or maybe Duggard, I don't know. But I don't know if I'll enjoy his writing style or not, but I mean, I didn't pay hardly anything for this. Then I got a couple of, I don't know if they're technically contemporaries or not. I'm really not sure. We'll say contemporaries / more modern written books. So we have The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon. I really don't know very much about this. I've heard lots of people talk about it. It's kind of billed sometimes as like a modern classic, even though I don't think it's that old. I think it was published in like the 2000s, 2003. And in my mind, that's not really a classic, but I guess it's still 20 years old. But anyways, I also like that it kind of has this hole in it and then the step back cover. So picked up this, it's in great condition. And then I also found Salmon Fishing in the Yemen, which I know they made a movie about. I was gonna say semi-recently, but I don't think it's been that recently. I think Ewan McGregor was in it. So I don't know anything about this either, but you know, it was cheap and I liked the cover, and I think I heard good things about the movie, I think. So I didn't even know it was based on a book, but I found the book. The one and only middle grade that I have with me, my daughter kind of stole the other ones, is A Long Walk to Water by Linda Sue Park. We own a lot of Linda Sue Park books, and we really love her books. A lot of her books are dealing with Korean things, like either historical fiction in Korea or, you know, about people who are Asian American, and this is different. This is actually kind of, I want to say nonfiction. It's not technically a nonfiction, but it is based on a true story. And so it actually has to do with people having to walk a long way to get water in Africa, and then a digging of a well in their village. So I've read it before. It's really good, and it's definitely one I would like Claire to read at some point. Let's move on to some classics. I found some super old classic books that are kind of like a little, this one is kind of a little yucky looking. And they smell very musty, and I'm gonna see if I can try to get some of the mustiness out of them because I really love old books. I don't care that the spine is stained, as long as it can get some of the musty smell out so it's not like smelling when I'm trying to read it. And I've already been looking up techniques, so I'm hopeful that I can find something that works. But if you have a tip, feel free to leave it in the comments down below. If you have bought or found musty books and you found a way to kind of alleviate most or all of the smell, I would really appreciate that. The first one I found is The Poor Little Rich Girl by Eleanor Gates. I don't know anything about this author. I just really liked how old this book, I think it might actually be a middle grade. I would guess so, actually, from the end papers. So technically could have included this in the middle grade section, but it's really old, and I have a hard time passing up old books. This one was published in 1912, so it's over 100 years old. I also found in decent condition Dear Enemy by Jean Webster. This is the sequel to Daddy Longlegs, which I read, I think last year, maybe last year. I feel like it was last year. Maybe it was the year before, and really enjoyed it. It's actually the only epistolary novel I've ever read and liked. So I have hopes for Dear Enemies, which is the sequel, and this one is actually a first edition published in 1915. Super excited about this one. This one doesn't seem to have as much water damage as some of the other ones. The next one I'm going to show has more water damage. It does have some on the spine, but it doesn't smell as musty as some of the other ones either, which is good because it's the classic that I'm the most excited about. I also found Thelma by Marie Carell. This was actually the first old book that I found, and I looked it up on Goodreads, and I have a few friends who have read it and enjoyed it, so I decided to get it. I didn't check to see what the date is on this one. Actually, I don't think it has a date because it's actually missing the title page, and the cover's kind of just barely hanging on by a thread. But I have a hard time passing up really old books. I also found a play, Waiting for Godot, which I've heard of and I know the basic premise of, but I've never read it. I also found some Albert Camus books, which I've never read anything by him. Hilariously enough, this has a McKay's sticker on it. And whoever got this at McKay's paid $5 for it, and I paid like 5 cents for it, which is really funny. Anyway, so we have The Fall. I've heard of The Stranger by him before, but I haven't read it, and that's the only thing of his I've heard of. So we have this, and then we have The Myth of Sisyphus and Other Essays. And I love these vintage covers. I have a couple of Russian classics in this. I have Demons in this edition by Dostoevsky, and also Dead Souls by Gogol in the vintage edition. And I just really like how these editions are kind of like these cool, modern, minimalist looking covers, and I really like them. I also found some short stories by F. Scott Fitzgerald called Flappers and Philosophers, and I haven't even looked inside to see how many stories there are. 8 of them. I didn't even know Fitzgerald wrote short stories. I've only read like some of his novels. I think I've read 3 of them, one of which I really loved, The Great Gatsby, and then one I really liked and one I really, really hated. And I can't remember which one it was that I really, really hated. I want to say it was The Beautiful and the Damned, but it might be This Side of Paradise. It's one of those 2. I've read both of them, and one I despised with all my soul, and the other one was fine. So I need to figure that out. If I read the synopsis, I could tell you. So I don't know what I'll think of these. But again, when I'm not paying much for them, I don't worry about it too much. I found a George MacDonald book that I've never heard of. I thought he pretty much only wrote middle grade books plus fantasies. Is it fantasies or fantasties? I don't know how you pronounce it. That one, which I have not read, which is for adults. But then I found this, which is The Maiden's Bequest, which I don't know. It says it's a romance. I have no idea. I don't know if it's any good at all or not, but it is the same George MacDonald. I checked, and it was originally published in like the 1800s when his other books were. So I know that this is really his, but I don't know. The cover is kind of weird, but I really like George MacDonald, so I do want to give it a try. Also found a Steinbeck, Sweet Thursday. I almost said Sweet Tuesday. Sweet Thursday. And this is actually, I think, the sequel to Cannery Row. Penny was talking to me about this, and she read Cannery Row earlier this year and started to read this one and just kind of like set it aside because it just wasn't doing it for her at the time. But I don't think she disliked it. I think she's planning to return to it. I still haven't read Cannery Row, I don't think, but I do own that one as well. This is a different edition than my other Cannery Row, because the Cannery Row is like the edition that I love that I found, but you know, it's fine. It's fine. My books don't all have to match. I'm totally okay with that, especially when I'm paying thrift store prices. And then I found an Elizabeth Gooch, which I have read nothing by her either, and she's also an author that I've really, really wanted to read that has come highly recommended to me from Kate Howe, and I love most of the things that Kate Howe recommends, especially like her more cozy things. I really enjoy those. So Pilgrim's Inn, this also looks like some sort of romance. I have no idea. I don't know if it's any good, but my library doesn't have anything by Elizabeth Gooch, and so I can't find anything by her. So when I found anything written by her that's super cheap, I had to pick it up. The only thing I think I own by her is A Little White Horse, which is a middle grade, and I still haven't gotten around to reading that one either, but now I have another one to choose from. Kate, if you're watching this video, or anyone else who has read Elizabeth Gooch and is watching this video, is this a good one? Did I do okay, or am I going to regret trying to read this one? The cover, I don't know. The cover makes me think a little iffy thoughts, but Old covers sometimes do that for me. So minus a few middle grades that my daughter stole, those are the books that I got from the thrift store. But that's not all. I stopped at my library to pick up some holds that I had on my way back home from the thrift store. And do you know what they were selling at my library? When people come and they donate books, they very rarely actually put them on the shelves because they don't have a lot of extra room. So it usually goes on a table where you can buy books for 25 cents each. Sometimes if they're overflowing, they'll do 10 cents just to get rid of more. And do you see all these penguins right here? Someone had gotten rid of a ton of Penguin Classic editions, and as you can see, I picked up a lot of them, and I paid $3.50 for this stack. I'm gonna go through and show you what I got. I'm holding them in my lap and regretting that because it's very tall. So I got 2 Years Before the Mast by Richard Henry Dana Jr. I'm pretty sure that this is actually nonfiction about someone's time on a boat and preparing for that. Speaking of boats, I also got a Raphael Sabatini book, Captain Blood. What a cover, am I right? I'm actually going to be reading my first Raphael Sabatini, I think next month or August, sometime in the summer. Katie from Paperbacks and Ponytails and I are going to be reading Scaramouche, which I don't know anything about at all, except I think it's kind of like an adventure story. So I got this one. This one's actually a lot shorter than Scaramouche, I think. I also got Clotel by William Wells Brown, and I've heard someone talk about this semi-recently. And by semi-recently, I mean within the last year or so. And I don't know who it was, and I don't remember if they liked it, but 25 cents, come on. Next, I got Our Nig by Harriet E. Wilson, and this is from a free Black woman who is writing. This is a nonfiction, and I'm really excited to read this one. I have a feeling it's gonna be equal parts sad and enraging, but we'll see. And then I also got, by James Weldon Johnson, in the same vein, The Autobiography of an Ex-Colored Man, and this is kind of, I think, along the veins of Nella Larsen's Passing, but I'm pretty sure it is actually a nonfiction. I could be wrong though. I'm pretty sure he can pass as a white man, but he is actually an African American, and I'm pretty sure that it is a nonfiction. I also got quite a few Herman Melville, and so the first one, I actually did get Moby Dick. Do I already own Moby Dick? Yes, I do. So why did I pick this up when I haven't even read Moby Dick yet and I actually own a copy of it? I picked it up because this is Penguin Classic and because there will be tons of notes in the back. And the one that I have is a Reader's Digest version, but not abridged, just like one of the really pretty like hardback Reader's Digest ones. And it doesn't have the same notations and everything. So it was totally worth it to me to get this for 25 cents. And if I really end up hating Moby Dick, which I don't anticipate, but if I end up hating it, I can more than make my money back at McKay's by bringing this there. So the other Herman Melvilles I got was Omu and also Taifi, which is a peep at Polynesian life. So I don't know, this one says right here that it was one of Melville's most popular works at some point, and it's a travelogue that idealized and romanticized a mysterious South Sea island for readers in the ruthless, industrial, civilized world of the 19th century. So that's interesting. And this, I just looked at the back. This is apparently, I don't know if it's a direct sequel, but it takes place in the same area, still like that South Sea vibe. I also forgot where I put it. I think it's probably in my bedroom and I just didn't bring it in, but I also did get Don Quixote, which I am currently reading. And again, you may be like, why are you getting that? First of all, because when I started Don Quixote, I had heard nothing about the translator that I was reading for the edition that I had, which is the Macmillan Classics library, like collector library edition. And so part of the reason I picked it up was in case I didn't like the other Don Quixote translation. The other reason is the same as Moby Dick, that it's got all the footnotes and all the information in the back, which can be contextually and historically really helpful to help you understand some of the things that are trying to be conveyed there, because obviously I'm not an expert in Spain at the time of those books. All the rest of the books that I have here, I have never heard of the author or the title, so we'll go through these really quick. I have Life is a Dream by Pedro Calderon de la Barca. It says it's Spanish golden age drama imbued with highly poetic language and humanist ideals, an allegory that considers contending themes of free will and predestination, illusion, and reality, played out against the backdrop of court intrigue and the restoration of personal honor. That actually sounds super good. I did actually like look through the backs of these before I picked them up. There was a few I didn't bring with me, but that doesn't mean I actually remember what they said because there's so many of them. I also got this one, is huge. The Decameron by Giovanni Boccaccio, perhaps? Clearly Italian, and it is a fiction that is set in the summer of 1348. As the Black Death is ravaging their city, 10 young Florentines take refuge in the countryside. It sounded interesting. Next up we have James T. Farrell's Young Lonergan. This is taking place in the summer of 1916 in the south side of Chicago. And it sounds like there's a 15-year-old boy who is wearing his first long trousers and is ready to kick loose. I also found Return of the Spirit by Tawfiq Al-Hakim. This was originally published in Arabic in 1933 and follows a young Egyptian and his extended family as they grapple with failed romances and in the period leading up to the 1919 Egyptian Revolution against British rule, which I don't know anything about. So that sounds super interesting. And lastly, I have Rosario Castellanos, The Book of Lamentations. And this is talking about a fictionalized Mayan uprising that resembles many of the rebellions that have taken place since the indigenous people of the area were first conquered by invaders from Europe 500 years ago. And it also says on here that this is a masterpiece of contemporary Latin American fiction from Mexico's greatest 20th century woman writer, which I haven't read that many books that have actually come from Mexico in terms of classics, so that's really exciting. So there you have it. Those are the books that I got. Spent about $5 for all of those books, which is amazing. And actually there's more that I didn't show you because, like I said, there's probably about half a dozen books that were my daughter's and they're gone. They're somewhere. I don't even know. Somewhere in her mess of a room that I do not want to wade through and try to find them. So anyways, I would love to hear from you in the comments down below. Have you read any of these books before and do you recommend them? Especially some of the more obscure Penguin classics that I have here. I've never heard anyone talk about them. So if you've heard of them or have read them, love to know what your thoughts are. And if there's any that just intrigue you and you would like to see me read sooner rather than later, feel free to input that as well. And if you have any books that you're really excited that you have bought or found while treasure hunting at a thrift store recently, I would love to hear about those too. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like and also subscribe so you can continue to see more bookish content from me, and I will see you again next time.